Hello and welcome to a Start Select election special. Let me just say congratulations to the
Hung Parliament
party and hope we all prosper under the new leadership of
Hung Parliament.
I tell you, I've always loved that guy. Coming up in this show, we look at UFC Undisputed 2010, get stuck into some co-op and deathmatch multiplayer in Lost Planet 2, and visit Lionhead Studios to meet Mr. Peter Molyneux.
We also announced the winners of Alice in Wonderland and unveil our new retro competition to win a NES.
Having endured the mean streets of Yorkshire, I was the perfect man to check out UFC Undisputed 2010, so I spoke to the game's producer, Neven Dravinski, to find out more. Alright guys, we are lucky enough to be joined today in our London offices by Neven Dravinski, who is the producer on UFC 2010.
Happy to be here.
Welcome to the show, Neven.
Thank you.
So tell us about UFC 2010. It's the follow-up to UFC 2009, which was the biggest selling fighting game in the UK of last year.
Thank you.
Are you feeling the pressure?
Well, you know, certainly there's a lot of pressure, you know, to live up to those high expectations. But you know, I honestly think we made a better game this year. You know, when we set out to make the 2010 product, this summer sat in a room and said, all right, well, we've made a great fighting game, a great representation of the UFC brand and the sport of mixed martial arts. And now we have to crush it and destroy any memory of that game and wipe it off the face of the earth. And I think we did that. I think we made a better game. You know, game plays a lot faster, plays better. I mean, we've been able to add all these things that you know, were somewhat lacking in last year's game. And you know, though last year I felt we got close to bringing as real as it gets to fans, I think this year we were really able to deliver on that.
Now, I've seen the videos of the progression between UFC 2009, which was the first UFC game, to this year. In terms of just pure visuals, it looks a lot better.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of polish went into the game this year. You know, we were able to add, I mean, just from a visual perspective, you know, a lot more work went into the shaders, dynamic lighting. You know, animations are a lot smoother. I mean, you know, as far as stats go, we quadrupled the number of strikes in the game, tripled the number of ground positions, doubled the number of submissions. You know, so literally, you know, we went down and looked at everything that went into last year's game and saw, you know, what was working and what wasn't. And you know, we're very passionate. Our team's very competitive people. I mean, not with you know, not certainly within the company, within the industry, and you know, we're really big on this brand and this sport. You know, so I think we're probably our own worst critics, and you know, nothing's quite ever good enough for us, and I think that sort of carries its way over into the game.
Coming up next, it's a welterweight matchup.
All right, so tell us about some of the new features.
Well, I mean, visually, from a visual perspective, the newest, you know, obviously, I think the coolest thing is this aspect of sways and leans. You can see here I hold on the upper right stick and then flick on the left stick, upper right RB, and then flick on the left stick, and I'm able to do these dodges and weaves, and as you're punching me, I can counter off of those sways and leans, you know, to my advantage here. One of the improved aspects of the game this year is this concept of sub positions. Here you can see I can posture up on the ground, and I'm able to get into what we call, you know, this sub position, where now I can push away from you and then unload, and you know, it gives me the opportunity to end the fight from any position in the game. You know, this is something save the day. I mean, these are all aspects that are, you know, kind of new to this year. I mean, we've improved the injuries, as you can see here, but you know, that sub position aspect allows us to kind of have different you know, attacks from different positions. Here you can posture up and really rain down and end a fight from multiple positions. A really cool kind of aspect to the game this year. You can also have multiple submissions from each sub position. So if you posture up in a position, you can change your submission. So you know, it allows us to have more variety in the game as well. What you're seeing here is our clinch game, and we've actually been able to apply those ground game transitions, those quarter circle and greater than quarter circle turns, to the clinch game as well. So you're not having to relearn you know, a new position or a new control scheme in these positions. You're able to just utilize the dynamic that you're comfortable with or that you've already learned on the ground in the clinch as well. You can see I can actually walk you over and utilize the cage to my advantage
I'll stop pushing
as well.
Back, sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
So this is a big new feature in this year's game. You can push me against the
utilizing the cage to my advantage, and I can push you into it. Now my strikes take on a much more devastating tone to them. As you try and kick, for example, out of here, you can see it just looks weak. And from a system level, it's weak as well. You know, I can utilize the cage for takedowns. You can see I can push against it. Pull you out of the cage as well, and then I go back and utilize those quarter circle and greater than quarter circle turns to my advantage.
Paulo Thiago, Dan Hardy, fight! Round 1 is underway.
All right, so let's try some of the submission moves.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shall I grab you?
Yeah, go ahead and take me down.
Slams him down. Side control now.
Okay.
Now click in on the right stick.
He's looking for a Kimura.
Now you see here as you spin the stick, spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it.
Okay, yeah.
Boom. You saw how the arm is actually moving into the bad position.
Yeah, yeah.
The camera moves in. So last year, you know, one of the things that we noticed that we didn't really have a way to convey, success or failure while in a submission. We had very kind of static states. You had an initiation animation, you had a kind of mid-tier, and then a success or failure. And because of the choice that we made, you know, graphically, we don't have any, graphical elements on the screen, no HUD. We want to replicate the pay-per-view experience. So we've, kind of utilized this trick of having the camera move in, indicate, where the submission is happening. So by the camera moving in, that's indicating successful submission. Camera moving out, failure.
Roy Nelson, James McSweeney.
Last year we had this concept of predefined combos where things were, basically, certain button presses would result in combos for you. This year we've gone with the take of you can combo anything into anything. It basically allows you to kind of just decide how you want to fight, as a player. You can literally go through, and if you want to be as deep as looking at the frame counts and doing frame-by-frame analysis of which animations take less time, you can do that. I mean, the game, it's a deep game. So again, you can combo anything into anything, and it's really up to you as the player to kind of figure out which animations are going to play better into one another in which situation.
And that includes being able to cancel moves with blocking as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can use the block. That was something people kind of discovered last year. We didn't really kind of touch on it, but yeah, you can use the block to kind of cancel moves, and it's a very while we still have that easy to pick up aspect to the game. We do feel it's a very deep game, and if you can spend hours kind of learning how to master it with all the specific things that you're able to do, much like the real UFC. I mean, it's a very complex sport, a very deep sport, and these guys are true mixed martial artists, and as a result, we felt we needed to convey that in a game to do it justice.
Last question, can we expect any DLC post-release?
I can neither confirm nor deny the DLC that will or will not happen post-release, but yeah, best I can say is stay tuned.
Okay, great stuff. The game is out on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, what dates?
May 28th in the UK, and the PSP will be coming out later in the fall.
All right, great stuff. Neven, thanks so much for coming in
My
and showing
pleasure
off
for
the game.
being here.
And we'll look out for it in store soon.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We voyaged to Lionhead HQ to meet the eponymous Peter Molyneux to talk about the Fable series, including the upcoming Fable 3.
It's pretty hard to look back at any work that you've done before, and there's always this feeling of regret. You start off with this grand vision, and this time we're going to do it right, and this time we're going to work smart, and we're not going to over-promise and under-deliver and all of those things. And when you're developing a game, and especially when you're developing such a big game as Fable, it's easy to make a lot of mistakes. And I look back at Fable II, and firstly there's this one thing which is, when I learnt it, I just became incredibly sad, was that more than half the people who played Fable 2 actually used only about half the features of the game. So most people didn't change their costumes. They just when they were given a costume, they just changed into it. They didn't realize that had an effect on the world and the simulation. The simulation itself, because we didn't kind of expose it to players, it wasn't, they didn't realize the consequences of going and slaughtering all the people in Oakvale. They didn't realize the consequences of getting married to one person or another person. There was a huge number of these game mechanics which were all there and they're all working, but they were like little cogs in a machine that didn't do anything. And that, that's just poor. That's just rubbish. On top of that, there's another huge portion of the game was the GUI, the 2D GUI. Collecting things in role-playing games are very important. It's a really core part of what role-playing games are. But whenever you collected something in Fable 2, it just went into a big list, and that was it. You didn't feel, hey, I've got that stuff, hey, this stuff is important to me because of this reason or that reason, hey, I can use this thing with that thing. It was all there, just if you were smart enough, or dedicated enough, you would find it. And that sounds poor. And it makes me frustrated, but in one way, but in another way, I realise there's an opportunity to change it if you go on further with the franchise. So that was the bad stuff, quite a lot of bad stuff. The good stuff is I think the breadcrumb trail worked really well. I think it's exactly what we wanted it to be. It was both a corridor for players who want corridors, for players who don't want to feel lost. It was that corridor that allowed them to explore a little bit without the frustration of where the hell am I and what's going on next. I think it really worked well if you hadn't played Fable for a couple of days and you came back and thought, now where was I supposed to go? Oh, you just follow the breadcrumb trail. So that worked really well. I think the dog worked really well. I think people just emotionally a lot of people got connected with their dog. A lot of people predicted, I don't want a dog to follow me around, but actually, they liked it. It was an emotional, part of the game, and he was very charming. I think, we could do things better for sure, but that kind of worked well. I think some of the choices in the game were good. Some of the choices in the game were still a little bit on the cheesy side or bad. I think the drama and the story, a lot of the times in the story, we kind of relied on the fact of you being totally immersed and understanding what was going on, and characters. I think some of the cinematics needed, a lot of improving. So Fable II was a sort of this big pot of things, some of which were good, some of which were not so good. God, I can't begin to tell you what it's like to get reviews from in magazines and on websites, because it's kind of like getting a school report, but 100 million times more important. And a lot of the reviews were just wonderful when they said, I got to a point in the game and it really stayed with me, and the choices I made really felt emotional, and it was an emotional game. And I loved the reviews when we just made people laugh and they felt involved in the game. So that was a fantastic feeling to get those, that people got that. I took on board that some people said that there were some frustrations with things like co-op, being tied together. And you kind of read that review and you think, oh great, yeah, well when we go forward we'll definitely fix those things. I think that there were some very negative reviews which you kind of always take to heart. You pretend to be a brave soldier and say, oh well, they didn't play the game. But you realise that it's hard to make a game that everybody just thinks is great and wonderful. And I would have personally, there's a list of things that I would have marked Fable II down on. Probably the GUI, a lot of that stuff. I think some of the drama was a little bit sort of hidden away, to say it best. I think some of the characters were very wooden, and some of the events weren't significant enough. We didn't kind of layer in things right. I don't think the reviewers really picked up on that. At the end of Fable II, we kind of looked at all the items which were important. We wrote a list of things. Hey, these are important to Fable. The hero, you being a hero, you feeling powerful, the morphing stuff was unique to us. The dog was a really big success. The breadcrumb trail was really a success. And we started to say, hey, with these big successes, how can we make them much better? So for the dog, for example, we kind of said, he's a bit too well behaved, isn't he? He needs to have more of a character. And so we introduced to his mind this utter hatred of rabbits. It sounds a bit trivial, but it's actually quite an important dramatic point in the game. The breadcrumb trail, it's not only when the breadcrumb trail is there, it's when it's not, it's how brightly it shines and what it's pointing out. I think there's been some really good work done on that. And then all of the GUI stuff needed a complete reinvention. All of the combat stuff needed to be the combat was goodish, but it was a bit disjointed. It didn't flow It didn't make you feel powerful, and you know there wasn't enough to experiment with there. So we reinvented, you know, thinking of reinventing that combat stuff, the drama and the story. You know, the drama, you know, the story of Fable II was very formulaic. You know, there's a really big bad guy and you have to go and beat up the bad guy, and we sort of questioned about that. Pretty much, well, everything that you can think of has gone through sort of major thoughts.
Lost Planet 2 demands that you play it with friends, so we set up a LAN in the office and booted up the mech suit for some co-op.
It's going to be difficult to maintain satellite surveillance in that area. I'm relaying the latest intercepted transmissions now. You hear that?
Alright guys, Lost Planet 2 launches on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 worldwide on 11th of May, but myself, James Day, our current intern, and Mark Walton sat next to me, all got the chance to jump in and play a co-op match as well as some competitive multiplayer. James, the original Lost Planet, I remember playing it a lot online, but now it's been expanded. We jumped into this arena mode and played with some new custom characters which are only available on the Xbox 360.
That's right. Yeah, in the 360 version at least, we've got two of the guys from Gears of War, Dom and Marcus, Albert Wesker from Resident Evil series, and Frank West from Dead Rising, which is all quite bizarre yet interesting additions to the multiplayer.
And as we saw in our demo, you can camp them up like anything. You can stick a bear backpack, a teddy bear backpack onto Frank. You can make Dom do loads of feminine poses. It's just basically my dream, really. Always
yeah,
to see
it's
like
basically this. Japan, the game, taking these serious macho guys from an action game and giving them girly, like blowing kisses, emotes and stuff like that.
So you jumped into the multiplayer. You played against Mark, teaming up with someone from Capcom. Some may say that was pretty unfair, but tell us about what weapons you used, how you found the multiplayer.
Okay, so this time around you get to sort of kit out your guy before you go into the game. So Leo unlocks all these special weapons for us, like, you know, level 2 snipers, level 2 machine guns, that sort of stuff, and the comedy love gun, of course. But yeah, the mode we played at least was kind of a standard deathmatch thing that you've probably seen in Lost Planet 1, but of course there were the BS suits spread around as well to use. So yeah, it's just a typical deathmatch from what we played.
So Mark, you can jump into a large mech suit, which is, you know, it's pretty powerful, but it slows you down. Or they've got these light armoured suits, so you can just jump in and kind of get the benefit of extra armour without being slowed down.
Absolutely. And the light armour suits were particularly useful because, you know, you could, if someone was in a big mech suit, even though they had like, they move really slowly basically, and you could pick up a grenade launcher and put on the armour, and by the time they shot your armour off, you'd gotten in enough grenade launcher shots to kind of blow them up. What's interesting about the game is when you're in a match, you don't have specific weapons you pick up. You have a specific weapon type, so that might be light weapon, heavy weapon, medium, and you customise what type of weapon it is when you pick it up in your customization screen. And as well as that, you know, you've got all like the kind of funny headgear and stuff you can give them. There's ones that like kind of look a bit like Predator, with like big dreads at the back and a big face mask on. And then obviously you've got like the really funny ones. And making Dom and Marcus do the feminine poses is just
prancing around.
It is really funny.
It's almost RPG-like now, because all these unlocks that we've talked about, like the new weapons, the new armour and stuff like that, is all unlocked by levelling up your guy. So the more you play, the more of this cool stuff you're going to get.
As well as the multiplayer competitive modes, we also got to jump into the co-op modes and play some of the game's campaign. Mark, we jumped in about 4 chapters into the game. It was kind of dark. It was, you know, heavy combat, mech suit action. What did you reckon? Did you enjoy it?
I think one of the great things is when you kind of have to work together as a team, especially when you're trying to find some of the goals later on. Like there's these big posts, data posts that you have. And you kind of have to mash the circle button to get them. But if you get your team around them and all mash circle button, it makes it much quicker. Yeah. Which it makes it especially easier if you're getting attacked by like a load of enemies at once. You want to get those posts kind of ticked over like as soon as possible. And the other great thing in the single player I found was the big boss battles. They're kind of really exciting. You know, you come around a corner and suddenly by like this huge acrid will be right in front of you. and you kind of have to aim for these yellow parts on his body, and those are the weak points, and that's where you shoot at, and then his legs will come off, or his arms will come off, or whatever, and you kind of just all take him down gradually. And I thought that was really, really good fun.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about the original that seems to have been ramped up even more in the second game, in as much as you're just taking on these huge things that you see them and you're like, oh my god, how am I going to take this down?
Absolutely.
And it's very dependent on you working together to do that. Tell us about the co-op mechs.
Well, the mechs are really interesting. You know, like when you kind of basically they're huge things, and you climb in, and on the sides there's like 2 other seats. There's one on the left and one on the right. So like 2 other of your teammates can get in, and then one of you pilots it, and you've got control of the main gun, while the other 2 kind of have control of these side arms that are on the mech. And it kind of just lumbers along. It's quite slow, but it's really, really powerful because you've got all 3 of you like with these great big guns, and you're surrounded by the armour of the mech. So you're kind of going around, and they're really great for taking out a big load of troops at once and taking on like the other mechs that the enemy might have.
James, the game still seems to be heavily based around thermal energy, collecting that to keep you powered up. Is that a good thing? Do you think it gets tiresome having to keep collecting that stuff?
That was always one of my bothers with the first game, that to get in like the mechs and keep them powered up, you did need to keep grabbing this energy that came out of enemies and boxes and whatnot, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys. Lost Planet 2, as we said, is available on the 11th of May. It's available initially on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 and will launch on the PC at some time later.
Last time on Start Select, we had an amazing Alice in Wonderland press kit to give away, as well as signed copies of the games on Wii and DS. All you had to do was figure out the answer to this question. Who is the developer of the DS version of the game? The answer was French outfit Étrange Lebelous, and our big winner is David Berraclough from Essex.
We also have 2 runners-up who each bag a copy of the DS game. They are Jack Goodman from Oxfordshire and Thurston Johnston from Hampshire. Congratulations, guys. You'll be Alicing it up very shortly. This week, thanks to the folks over at 20th Century Fox and their new film Hot Tub Time Machine, we have a boxed NES and a Zapper and 2 controllers, as well as a combined Duck Hunt Mario Brothers cartridge to give away to 1 lucky viewer.
All you have to do is answer this question. What year did the NES actually launch in the UK? If you think you know the answer, email it to competitions@gamespot.co.uk.
But most importantly, include your name and address, as we get a million emails each week that are immediately deleted by hand by an army of children. Give us your freaking addresses, people. We'll see you again next time on Start Select, when we'll have more interviews, previews and competitions, including the chance to win an Xbox 360 Elite. Bye-bye!